Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Full Scottish Podcast. My name is Allan and I'd just like to start off by thanking you all so much for the kind response on social media and other platforms as well in regards to this podcast. It really means a lot that you are all just being so kind and sending me all lovely nice messages. I've been really wanting to get this up and going for a while now, so it's just I'm so glad to finally get this started up, and knowing I have a lot of your support is absolutely brilliant. So thanks again for that. Basically, I'd just like to start off this podcast by just letting you know a little bit about myself, what my experience is with Scottish football, what I plan on doing within this podcast, and my hopes for the podcast going forward. Shouldn't take too long before we get into the next episode, but a lot of you do want an insight, so I'll give you that just now. So basically, I'm an Aberdeen fan that has grew up in the Kilmarnock and East Ayrshire area for pretty much all of my life so far. Now, I know a lot of you are asking, why the hell are you an Aberdeen fan when you're from the Kilmarnock and East Ayrshire area and not supporting your local teams? But basically, my family, my dad's side of the family, are Aberdeen fans, and I have been brought up to be an Aberdeen fan since I was as young as I can remember. When it comes to Aberdeen games, I've not always been able to go to Aberdeen games as you'd expect staying down here. My parents, both my mum and my dad, worked very hard when they were younger to try and get me and my sisters just everything we could and give us the best possible upbringing. So it meant that a lot of stuff was sacrificed, which, especially as you'd expect, football was included in that. But we'd still manage to go to Aberdeen games, as many as we possibly could, just going to local games every year. Kilmarnock was always brilliant as well because we're right in the doorstep, so it was pretty easy to go to games like that and away games, but wasn't always as easy to get up to Pittodrie for some experience, which is quite frustrating, but I made up for it in other ways. So when I was younger, I can't remember what age, but I just remember being a young boy and being told for the first time I was going to Rugby Park to go and watch Kilmarnock. My uncle Stuart, he is a massive Killie fan, and he offered as well, and my family agreed that it was probably best for me at that age to be getting some regular time watching the football and to be getting that exposure to football so that I didn't lose my love for it. So my uncle agreed to take us to Rugby Park, and from there on, I loved it. It was absolutely brilliant. I know a lot of you won't agree, but at the time I thought the atmosphere was brilliant. It was just great to be going and watching a club regularly. So from there on, my uncle decided that it was about time I got a season ticket, so he got me my first ever season ticket in football, and I would just go to Rugby Park every weekend, which was absolutely brilliant when you were a child, just being able to go and watch a team. And it helped me to grow and appreciate other teams within Scotland as well. As much as I would have loved and preferred to be at Aberdeen, it was great spending time with my uncle, great meeting a lot of people at Rugby Park. They were all so lovely and kind, and they never really bothered them that I was an Aberdeen fan. They just enjoyed the fact that I was coming to Rugby Park to watch their teams at the weekend. And at that point, you would say you were a Killie supporter as well when you were young, when you didn't really care about rivalries or anything. It wasn't that big. But ever since I was basically earning my own money, it was just a case of I want to go to try and get to as many local games at football. I work on the railway, so I'm constantly working weekends and throughout the week, different shifts. Doesn't always make it the easiest to get up to Pittodrie because it's obviously a long journey back to try and get trains back to Kilmarnock as well. It's just the trains aren't at exactly the best times, so they can't always do it. But I always want to be exposed to Scottish football, so I started going to local junior games, went to go and watch Darvel. Don't really do that as much after they beat us in the cup, which I don't want to talk more about, but I've been to see Troon quite a lot. They helped us with a lot of all my journalism side of stuff, which I can't thank them enough for, but it's been brilliant to go and see them. Just more local teams, like the Irvine teams as well, Kilmarnock obviously, drive up to Paisley to watch them, and just any local game that's on and I'm free to, I'll go and watch it and try and give my assessment, try and speak to people within the club and learn more about it. So that brings us on to my podcast and why I've basically started it up, and it's mainly because throughout my time when I've been watching these teams, I spoke to a lot of really interesting people who have gave such great opinions, I believe, on Scottish football, and are looking to change it for the better. And I would just like to speak to them on a platform such as this to try and learn a bit more. As I say, a lot of them are very busy at the weekends when it comes to A lot of them are volunteers as well, running about daft after the clubs to try and make sure that everybody has the best experience possible. But I'd like to give them a dedicated amount of time on a podcast like this to try and speak about their opinions, their experiences, about their knowledge about the game as well, which I think that you would all love and really enjoy hearing. So I hope that you'll all join me in listening to these people share their opinions and that. But it's not just these people alone that I'll be wanting to speak to. I'd quite like to get an insight from fans who go and watch teams regularly all across all leagues within Scotland, get an insight into what it's like supporting these teams, and to actually hear their thoughts on the club, as sometimes it's easy to go off what pundits and the likes are saying, but there's quite a lot of people who have knowledge within the club, and there's quite a lot of misspread information that I think can sometimes be taken too easily as the hearsay, whereas it's just pure utter nonsense. So it'd be quite good to speak to a lot of fans at these clubs, and they can give us the proper insight that they have. It's not just their insight I'd like to hear though, as there is many others working within Scottish football in roles, possibly director of football roles, volunteer work, other journalists, etc., who are trying to generally make Scottish football a better place for those and try and give them some great quality content, and to try and make sure that their business is running as good as possible and to give the fans the best experience possible at their clubs. So I'd quite like to get an insight into how they got into these roles, what kind of educational routes they had to take, what experience that they had, maybe through volunteering opportunities, which they had to undertake to try and get into their role, and the impact that they're currently having in Scottish football. I'm just in the hope as well, another reason just why I've created this podcast is so that maybe those young individuals who are looking to work within Scottish football, possibly those who are older as well, who are just either maybe sick of a career that they're in and would like something different to try and do, or even just to try and volunteer and help out within the local clubs, as a lot of these clubs are over-reliant on a lot of volunteer work and can really do with your help. So it would just be great, and an aspiration of mine, just to have somebody learn from this podcast to be able to try and get themselves within a role or some work experience within Scottish football and go, it was your podcast that helped us find out the right routes through talking to this person, and it just helped my son or daughter maybe, or me as an individual, get a role within Scottish football that everybody's so proud of us for. And I would love it if even one person could do that over the time. But I'm not just in the podcast for that, it's just more of an educational journey for myself. I'm just really eager to learn a lot about all this stuff going on within Scottish football, and it's just always there, as any as would like to join me in the journey, just to get that experience and knowledge and hopefully learn something for yourselves. I hope you've enjoyed that little insight into what my experience is and what my hopes are for the podcast, but I'm now eager to move on and get the insight of our first ever guest on the show, and that is Girvan first team manager Dean Keenan. So Dean has recently just left his role as assistant manager at Jimmy Kirkwood at Troon Football Club, and he's taken on his first ever managerial role within Scottish football. So on the podcast, I'm going to be talking to Dean about the changes which have been made within junior football, especially the West of Scotland football leagues, and what his experience are with those changes during his time as a player and manager. A little bit of an insight into what his career was like before, what his thoughts and hopes of the future with junior football, and just a little bit of an insight into his time managing at Girvan FC and what his hopes are in his future in management. We unfortunately ran into some issues recording the podcast, so I couldn't get this out as early as I'd hoped. We recorded this last Thursday on the 8th of August, and obviously couldn't get it released until now. But the only thing that's happened since then is that Dean on the podcast talks about playing 3 Rovers at home. They've played that game now and unfortunately lost 5-1, but that's probably the only thing which has been a bit outdated since we recorded this. And I think I've bored you enough now, so now we'll move on to the actual podcast. So here is the recording last week with Girvan first team manager Dean Keenan. So Dean, welcome to the podcast. I'm really delighted to have you on. It is my first ever guest on it. How are you doing, mate?
Aye, I'm good, Jay. Pleasure to be on. Thanks for asking me, and I've been looking forward to it, mate, since you asked me.
It's absolutely brilliant. There wasn't anybody else that I'd rather have on first. I forgot to ask you the last time as well that I was on as well. You were away to Germany for the Euros as well. How was that?
It was unbelievable. I went over for the opening game. And that was great in Munich. Thanks to a few of my mates, I managed to go over there, and then I'd come back, seen the kids for a couple of days, and then we'd planned to go to Berlin for a week. So went to Berlin for a week. I never got to the second game, but I went to the Poland-Austria game in Berlin, and that was unbelievable. And so then down to Stuttgart for the final game. So the two games that I went to for Scotland weren't great, but the Poland-Austria game made up for it.
No, that's decent. At least you got to experience some good games, because we were absolutely rotten through it.
Scotland were dreadful. I just thought they were the worst team in the tournament, which is unfortunate because they've got good players there. But we just didn't seem to have a go at all. And to get all that way to Germany and with such amazing support, the fans were absolutely unbelievable. And then for to put on such a poor effort, it was disappointing. But it was still a magical few weeks.
But I'm glad you had a good time anyway, mate. Hopefully there's plenty more of that in the future.
So fingers crossed. USA next year for the World Cup.
Hope so. So basically, just to kick things off, obviously I've heard a bit about your playing career through talking to you and that as well, but for those who are listening that don't really know your background or that, could you just give us a kind of rough insight into what your kind of career so far in the Junior League football is?
Of course. So in terms of the juniors, I'll start in reverse. So I was at Troon, I finished my career playing at Troon, and that's what kind of most people will remember me from. So I had 9 or 10 years there playing, and then a few years coaching as well. But before I went to Troon, I was on loan at Rob Roy as well from Ayr United. I had a bad knee injury when I was at Ayr United, and I just couldn't get back to any sort of level of fitness without my knee hurting and giving way again. And so I had 3 knee operations. I had two originally, and then I went on loan to Rob Roy, and I hurt it in my second or third game there, and ended up having to get another operation. So that kind of curtailed my professional career at Ayr, where I really enjoyed playing. Done really well when I was there, and I'd signed there from Morton, where I'd learned so much and how to kind of behave as a professional football player as such. Thinking back now, I probably didn't apply myself in the right manner when I was at Morton, which, listen, it's all part of your journey, I suppose, but Ayr United got the benefits of that. And then as a youth career, I was at Celtic as a young lad all the way through, and then I went to Hull United, just my local team. It was brilliant. They had some great players that came through. And then from there, I get picked up to Morton. But so Troon, great decade or so playing there. A lot of really, really good players there. Working with some amazing guys that are still there. And so that's always going to have a special place in my heart. But that's the kind of career as such. But I had great times at Ayr and great times at Troon, laterally playing at the West of Scotland Football League.
No, definitely an eventful career anyway, but you were saying there that you did have that regret of maybe not applying yourself. That was going to be my next question, is there anything you look back on and have any other regrets? Is there anything else apart from that you kind of wish had maybe went a little bit different?
I had a couple of options to go and play abroad when I was younger, when I was at Ayr United, and I think the kind of life that I was living away from football kind of encouraged me to stay in and around Glasgow and the West as such, whereas if I was to look back now, if I could give myself any advice, then it would be to go and experience playing away in Ireland and Norway as well. So that would have been the kind of thing that I could have, if I'd get to give myself any advice. Like, I don't regret it, Jay, I think that it's all part of your learning, it's all part of your learning curve. But I definitely look back at things that I would have done differently, but I think that's natural, and I think that's part and parcel of certainly when you finish your career and looking back. But there's a couple of things I would have liked to have done, and like I say, like playing abroad, and that could have been one of them. I remember Galway, Sean O'Connor was a manager to go to Galway, and I think they were into Europe that time, so that would have been something, because a couple of my mates, really good mates, Stuart Grecian being one of them, my mate from Morton, and he'd went to Derry City and done really well at Derry City, scored the winning goal in the FAI Cup final at the Aviva, which got them into Europe. Then they get Trabzonspor away. There's things like that I think would have been amazing. But like I say, I don't look back with too many regrets. I think that it is what it is, and as long as you learn from it and move on, then it's all good.
Oh, well, that's it. I mean, it's not all bad anyway, because you had quite a bit of success when you were playing as well. But what was probably your favourite part about playing in the kind of West of Scotland leagues, and what you achieved over your time playing?
My favourite thing probably was the most successful year we had at Troon, where we won the Ayrshire Cup, I think it was, against Hereford at Talbot's ground, and we won the second division, where we were a mountain of points behind Beath. And then we went on from January onwards. We were like a steam train, and we won almost every game from then to the end of the season. And I think we got beaten in the West final off Talbot, at Pollock's ground. That was definitely the highlight of my time in the West of Scotland. There's no doubt about it. In the Football League, the team that we had, it was just all honest boys that stuck in for each other. You know, not a lot of money involved. We were a minuscule club at that time, Troon on the way up. Jimmy Cutwood had come in and kind of turned the club on its head. And listen, he'll be the first to admit that in the third division or so that he had a bigger budget than others, and it was right to get out of that, and he did get out of that. But as we started to climb the ladder, it was more to do with what he created in the dressing room with the boys that he had, and good experience, good youth, and that was probably the highlight of my time at Troon, to be honest, when I look back now. And honesty is probably the word. We were just a great, honest bunch. We would go to war for each other on a Saturday, and then training was unbelievable. We had 19-20 bodies every training session, putting the work in, and competitive, because you wanted to be there, you wanted to be around the lads, and that was a great time. And there's no doubt about it that off the field stuff is the reason that we had a lot of success on the field.
But no, that was brilliant. Thanks very much for sharing that for everybody listening to it. It was great to hear a wee insight about that. So one of the reasons I told you I was bringing you on was to talk about the changes to junior football in recent years. So just before I start to talk about kind of more recent changes, obviously I wasn't too familiar with what it used to be like in the junior leagues for the West of Scotland. So can you just tell us a bit what the league kind of setup was like when you were playing or managing before all the changes?
So when I initially joined Troon, I think they were in a league called the Ayrshire District League, which was just for basically a lot of the bottom team for the bottom league for the teams in Ayrshire. And then there was loads of different tournaments and loads of different cups. My memory is not great in regards to a lot of them, but there was an Arda Cup at the start of the league. You had a cup section that you would play in, but it was all pretty regionalised. There wasn't as such West of Scotland as such, but it wasn't too long before that it did kind of become the West of Scotland Football League, and certainly not joined the Pyramids, but there was a West of Scotland Football League, I'm sure, just before we joined the Pyramid for a number of years. And I loved that. Being from Glasgow, I loved it when we got to play teams like Pollock, who for me are the biggest and best at this level. Obviously Clydebank now as well, another amazing club run with great people. So it was great for me to get back up there and play against these guys. As opposed to just on the Ayrshire ones, there's great clubs at Ayrshire as well. But I like the fact that it was more widespread as such. So that was what it was kind of like back then. But I've cut out all the competitions at the start of the season now, and I think it's a bit better because we do have loads of competition in a lot of league games, and there's not as many fixtures, I don't think, as what there used to be.
Well, that's what I was just about to say, because obviously there's a lot of cup competitions, like even just like watching you at Troon and that as well, just felt as if every other week as we're playing in a different cup draw, along with trying to fit all these league games in. But I didn't realise it was just as hectic back then, and probably even more so.
I think that's the thing for clubs like Troon, and as such, like sometimes the cups can be great, but sometimes it can be a hindrance as well to your league campaign. And I think last year in particular, we had a really difficult, or maybe the year before, we had a really difficult spell around about January, and I think we got knocked out of 2 or 3 cups in the space of 3 or 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden you're just looking at survival in the league again. And I think that could be the hard thing, but certainly last year with the South Challenge, where we can kind of kept us going. But if you look at the winners of the South Challenge Cup last year, the finalists, well, one of them was Rob Roy, and who unfortunately got relegated, and then the finalists in the Scottish Junior Cup, which is a pardon me, the best competition at this level. Davos and Arthur were in the final, and Arthur got relegated. So I think that gave those two clubs a great day out in the final. But at the end of the day, your league campaigns, your bread and butter, and if you don't go on to win those cups and league survival, I think that's got to be the most important thing for the Premier
definitely.
League.
So you were obviously saying there about teams like Arthurlie and Rob Roy being in finals and that as well, even though they were getting relegated. And you were talking about there about obviously the standard of players that you came through with during your time playing. Would you say that the standard of football is probably better now than it was before, or even just the overall quality of the leagues now in the west of Scotland?
It's obviously difficult as I'm managing at this grade of football now to comment as brutally honest. But for me, if I'm being honest, and it's not a case of the old crocs helping each other out, but for me the quality seems to be quite diluted. I just don't know if it's due to the multitude of teams or perhaps the finances now involved. But I think that, listen, the West of Scotland Football League's one of the most competitive leagues in the whole country, and there's no doubt about it, the Premier League especially. But I think the quality's diluted but to be honest, I think that's all the way through Scottish football, for the top all the way down. So I think that's pretty normal. I just think that certainly from what I've seen from the younger players coming through, they all seem to be quite similar, quite robotic, as opposed to having that freedom to go and express themselves. That I can think of the guys that I played in the past, that when they came through, they didn't need a lot of coaching. Whereas now I think that most young players coming through tend to need a lot of coaching. But listen, that's a challenge for myself. It's a challenge for every other manager that's working at this level. But it's an enjoyable one. It's an enjoyable one. I think that maybe the quality of football might be a bit better. Maybe overall, I think it's a lot more tactically based than what it certainly was when we first came in. When I first came in at this level, you could have had 11 players just go out and they didn't need much coaching, didn't need much tactics, organisation. There was a bit more freedom. And I think that's probably why it was a bit more favourable for guys certainly my age that played in my time, that we look back fondly on it. But listen, maybe the quality of the overall products improved. But the spectacle for me, I think it's lost its blood and thunder a wee bit.
That's it. And I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying. I mean, it still doesn't hinder my kind of enjoyment of the game. As I say, I've been going to quite a lot of regular games in the west of Scotland. They're still very enjoyable, but I just do sometimes wish that I was able to kind of see the quality of when you were playing in that as well, because it does sound as if there was some really good players coming through at that point.
There was, and like I say, I think it was more that freedom on the pitch. There'd been a few more Mavericks, certainly back then, that had played, that didn't need to be 6'2" and built incredibly well physically. There was a few boys, and even just to think back, I'm talking about my time at Morton earlier. We played against Mark Yardley when he was at St Mirren, and he was an absolute unbelievable football player, But I don't even think he would come through now if that was the case. If he was to come through with that body shape, that physique, I think he'd be probably hunted. But listen, overall, players have obviously physically improved and tactically improved. I just think that the actual ball players, maybe it's just my opinion. Maybe.
That's great though. Cheers for that insight, mate. So obviously in 2020, then after that, then the league was reformed into the West of Scotland Football Leagues. I'll just tell those that are listening that don't really know. So it was reformed with the Premier in first, second, third, and fourth division. And each team, in every season, there's 3 teams that get promoted from the league and 3 teams that get relegated. The exception obviously being in the fourth division, where nobody gets relegated because that's the bottom. And then in the Premier Division, where there's only one team that's able to go up to try and challenge for the Lowland League, but they have to go through a 3-way playoff with the winner of the South Scotland Football League and the East of Scotland Football League. So just touching on that as well there, do you think that league reconstruction will be beneficial to all the clubs in it in the long run?
I'm not so sure, to be honest. I think we've been sold a bit of a pipe dream with that, and I remember our first year in it, I think there was 7 teams that got relegated because maybe because of the COVID season. but there was 7 teams to be relegated from the Premier League, so I think that was an unbelievable achievement to stay up that year. But for me, all these clubs have invested heavily in their infrastructure to get academies in place to tie in with the stuff that you need to be in the pyramid, floodlights, all these other stuff to be licensed clubs, and then the gap's just getting narrower and narrower. In terms of I think that from the top of the West of Scotland, I think if you were to put, say, last year's winner into the top, into the Lowland League, I think that they'd go really, really well in that. I think that the setups could be potentially very good, but I think they need to open it up, the promotion and relegation, having to win leagues and then completing 3-team playoffs, just open it up, bottom 3 down and 2 up. I think that all these playoffs are just to maintain the teams at the top, in terms so that they can stay in the leagues. I think it's all set up and engineered for the League 2 club. Certainly Stranraer last year done it incredibly well to stave off East Kilbride. So I think it's just all set up for them though, So I think that if there was an automatic promotion and relegation, same with the top of the West of Scotland Premier League, the top of the East, top of the South and the Lowland League, I think that would be a lot better. But as it stands at the moment, one team going up every year, I don't think there's going to be too many teams, and I think that the problem is as well, even in our league, that Beath won it last year, I think, again, and they can't even get promoted, so obviously I can't comment on their own situation and that's up to them, but what Chris has done there, it's been unbelievable to go there and win the league back-to-back, and certainly it doesn't take away the feeling of being champions, but for me, the leagues have got to be opened up, top and bottom, promotion, relegation. And I think that so long, I can remember when I was playing East Stirling being a club that kind of floated about around the bottom of the leagues. And this is, again, no disrespect to them. I know their manager, Pat Scullion, really well, top manager. But now they have found themselves kind of languishing in the Lowland League, whereas other clubs, Linlithgow and the likes have kind of pushed on, and Bonnyrigg, look at Bonnyrigg into the Football League now, So I think that it's engineered, certainly for the top clubs, to push on if they can, but also I think there'll be some movement again in terms of having to be licensed clubs and entry to the Scottish Cup. I think that there's talk of moving the goalposts again for that bronze licence and what have you, and I think you've seen a wee bit of that with the Highland League team Bucket, was it, that couldn't even play in the playoffs. So I think they make it difficult at times, but the automatic promotion and relegation would be my way of going forward. But again, it's the Lowland League, they've got their votes, and even the introduction of B teams into it so that they can get a financial gain from that, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Well, that's what it was. My next question was going to be about what changes would you implement, but I completely agree with everything you said there. I think that, especially in the Lowland League, watching it the last couple of years especially, I feel like there's constantly a couple of teams at the bottom sitting in, barely struggling, barely getting double-digit points, sitting in minus 100 odd goal difference in the year, whereas there's teams in the likes of your West of Scotland League and that as well. There's always a great battle in that West of Scotland Premier Division to get up, and it's a shame that only one of them can go up, and even then you have to face against the challengers of 2 other different leagues as well to get in, which makes it even harder.
Yeah, well, that's it. Just for talking sake, Clydebank have invested in their squad this summer, and they've got a great management team, and they've got themselves a really, really good squad now, and they're absolutely destined, hopefully, touch wood, to go through the leagues again and be back where they rightly belong. But, if it was just a case of winning the Premier League and getting in, then it'd be great. But the fact that they have to then go and face off against the South and then the East, the East have got some terrific teams through there as well, I think they've benefited more from the setup rather than the West in terms of actual quality and putting teams into the Lowland League. I think that historically they've kind of pushed more teams through. So there's no doubt that there's great quality on the both sides of that. But yeah, listen, I hope that hopefully reconstruction and promotion and relegation becomes a thing. But I just can't see it due to the self-perseverance of some of the Lowland League clubs.
No, definitely, and even just touching when you were Clydebank, obviously when I came up to watch Clydebank Troon for that game, I just thought everything was brilliant. It was great to speak to everybody for the club, see how well run it was. Even the crowd during the game as well. It was just brilliant, plenty of noise all the way through it, and a great atmosphere to play in. And I just think that certainly won the Lone League. Like, obviously they're expecting that with the B teams coming in, and it just really hasn't kicked up attendances at all. Or it just seems to be a kind of dead nothing league that nobody really seems to take serious.
Nah, well, listen, I think I might be wrong, but I think that Clydebank's crowd at the weekend there was more than 3 or 4 games in League Two. You know what I mean? So what they've done there behind the scene, Grace, the chairman, chairlady, and all our staff and members, and that only happens if you've got a winning team as well. And Moff and Gary Mack, they've got a great setup there. They've got a great coaching staff, great group of them, 5 or 6 of them. And I had hope, obviously, if Trin don't go and win the league this year, then they'd hopefully be the next best team to go and win it.
No, I definitely agree. But obviously you were talking about clubs like Linlithgow Rose and Bonnyrigg and all that coming up as well, Trinent as well. Another example that have come up, but there's not been a team yet. If I'm right, there's not been a team from the West of Scotland Football League promoted yet. Obviously Darvel were in the playoff the year with Trinent. Don't know the truth in it, but everybody seems to be aware that half of the team were away in a stag do and weren't they taking it serious and completely made a balls of that. But it's
knowing Mick, I don't think that would be the case. He's very thorough in his preparation, and what they'd achieved that year was unbelievable for Darvel. It's okay investing in the squad, as you've seen though. There's been other teams that have invested heavily in the squad and no made it work. So what they'd done, and I think they had a few good core of boys as well at that time. Darren Miller and guys like that, who's an outstanding talent, but he's not just that. He's a great guy in the dressing room. He really unites everyone behind them, and so Mick and his team they were brilliant. And I just think that they came up against a good Trinent team on the day. I wasn't there, obviously. I never seen the game on that, but Trinent's went on and done not too bad in the Lowland League, so I think that there's a bit of cash through there as well, and so they've done really well. But hopefully the West can go and get promoted this year if it comes to it, whoever wins the West.
Well, that's the same. I'll be hoping the same as well, because also great teams in that Premier Division. You've got Talbot that have just been one of the best junior teams at that level. You're talking about Beath winning the league the last couple of years as well. I don't know, are they not getting promotion because they're not meeting SFA requirements, do you know? Or is it just like...
they've not got floodlights, so I think that'll probably be the biggest thing, that they've not got floodlights. I don't know if there's any other requirements they need to meet. But I'm sure I read something about they've got funding in place possibly for floodlights now, so that may change over the course of the season. But listen, Talbot, massive big club as well. They finished like a steam train last year. An absolute steam train, and they've had a great start this year and kept the majority of their squad and added a bit of quality as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were there and abouts come the end of the season, as they always are.
No, definitely. I'll be looking forward to the title challenge this year to see who gets it, because obviously there was a few teams I thought they were up fighting that I never expected in that. But just another thing to touch on. So it's always quite a lot of talk around here amongst fans and all that there's quite a lot of teams at junior level that are quite happy to be at junior level, like being the best. It's always been the talk of Auchinleck, Talbot. I don't believe it for a second, but quite a lot of people have the opinion that Talbot would just like to stay at junior level, be the best at that, like try and be the best that there is at that, and there's no real ambition to try and get promoted to the likes of Lone League and then fight on to go into League Two. Would you say that was? Do you think that might be the case with clubs, or do you just completely disagree with that?
I obviously can't speak for other clubs, but I just don't buy into that as such, Jay. Do you know what I mean? Because how can you attract quality players to go and win leagues when you've got no ambition to go and actually achieve that, and play at a higher level? I don't think there's anybody really that I've came across that's at this level just happy to be at this level. Certainly there might be the older guys that have came and played professionally all their careers and took a step back for a couple of years maybe to finish their career, but these guys have still got that inbuilt ambition to be the best. So certainly, listen, obviously I can only speak on behalf of Troon when I've been there for the time that I've been there, and we had ambition to be the best. I think that's inbuilt on you when you get onto football, and as soon as you step over that white line you want to be the best. But off the field as well, we wanted to be the best. Yes, we knew that it was going to be difficult, with certainly the finances involved. But listen, I think that ultimately, that's every club's ambition to try and progress as high as they can. Now, listen, with the pyramid, obviously there's been some teams that have suffered as well, none more so than Girvan, where I'm at the moment. Girvan were a Premier League team, and just 4 or 5 years ago. So there is also the other side of that with the money heavily invested and the resources, that there is other teams that kind of suffer as such. But again, that's just about looking after the things that you can look after and controlling what you can control. And I think that if you can get young players, there's a multitude of levels now. The hardest thing for me, obviously, this summer I've found is that there's too many young players not playing football anymore. And I don't know if this under-20s thing just kind of, a few that I've spoke to just get really scunnered by the under-20s setups at their clubs. And I think that for me, I think that was set up to kind of prepare players. And I think that there's been clubs that have absolutely utilised that and done really well. And Troon being one of them, the amount of young players that they've had through into the first team in the last 4 or 5 years especially has just been unbelievable. And they've always done that notoriously, but that's what I've seen at that level, and bringing young players through. And there has been other teams that have done it. Davo, I think, in the summer signed 4 or 5 of the young lads, and already I've seen a few of them score and do well. So I think that's the key. I think if you can get young players in and hopefully push through your academy, but listen, I know how difficult it is. At the end of the day, it's a cutthroat business as well. It's a results business, but for me, I think that they've got to encourage to try to get young players into the team, and if you can get young players into the team, then I think that you're going to stand a good chance.
I will just touch on that as well, because obviously when I first came to Troon to try and practice all my journalism and that, the first game was when they were revealing the floodlights and that, and Craig Brown came down and the likes of it, and it was just looked brilliant, the park and that as well. You've obviously had a lot of money invested into the park and that as well, and was it the start of the season or near the end of last season that Troon had actually opened the wee park at the back, the Astro one?
Aye, so that was at the end of last year that they'd managed to get that open. And yeah, listen, the club's invested heavily in the resources that they've got, but you can't beat a floodlight game, Friday nights under the lights, it's absolutely brilliant. See, as a player, as a coach, as a manager, as a fan, you all love it. You all love it, and I think that certainly if you can get the floodlights up and going forward, obviously the winter months and that, you get the Friday night under the lights. There's absolutely nothing better. But the resources is a big thing as well, and I feel for Troon a wee bit, with regards to that, because everything that Troon does through the club and through the Cutwoods and the resources and the chairman and they have to foot the bill for everything, and it's another thing that doesn't really sit with me, right, in terms of this grade of football, Premier League teams spending unbelievable amounts of money and they don't even have a stadium, don't have a stadium to play in, they're just ground sharing, or, I think that there's loads of things that are amazing about this level of football, but I think we also shoot ourselves in the foot at times, and I think that clubs like Troon are getting punished, Arthurlie getting punished, by clubs that, like I said, they don't even own the facilities, but they're just playing in Astro Parks or whatever it is. Like, they don't have their own stadium, but yet they've got a squad that's filled with quality and they can invest their money in other areas. Troon can't do that. Arthurlie can't do that. Massive club, Arthurlie. Massive football club. And they've got a good manager on Colin, and he'll get them back up hopefully this year. But so to speak, I think that for me, it's the club's invested heavily in the resources, and it's going to have the benefit long term. But the only way that you benefit that long term is to go back to what I touched on the previous point, is just getting their youth players, getting them all training in the one area, getting all the boys together so that you've got that thing. I seen Troon put up a thing the other day with the 20s, the first team and the 18s were all training together, I think, in 3 different parts of the area. And, that's a dream. I know that Jimmy's massive on that, and that's a dream to have all 3 teams training under the one banner. And then it's easier to do that progression, Jay, it's easier to go into the 18s to the 20s to the first team, you get a look at boys and you put them in that environment. And yeah, I think that's a good thing that Troon are doing, and I know that there's some other clubs that also employ that kind of tactics towards their training schedules. But so in terms of the stuff that Troon have done off the field, it's great, and they've heavily invested in the squad this year again. And listen to some of the signings that we've made. I think that what we spoke about was maybe a squad game more previously, with a good 16-17, but I think we were a bit light in terms of the numbers in the squad. But I looked at the bench Saturday, it's filled with quality. And what a fantastic start they've had to the season as well. So hopefully they can continue doing that.
Some result, especially at the weekend, they're beating Darvel 4-1 as well. I looked at Twitter, I saw 1-0 Darvel, I'm like, oh, how could this go? Looking at half time, it's like 4-1. I couldn't believe it, but even as you're saying with the likes of Troon, obviously you have experienced that in your time yourself there, with the kind of increased spending, a lot of the teams in that as well. There's a better quality, well, a decent quality, at least, of players coming through. How hard is that to try and find that balance between playing promising youngsters and trying to get them game time to stay on with the club and trying to keep the more experienced players happy that obviously more of the money is going into?
Aye, listen, just on the money side, it's out of control. A spade's a spade to me. The money side, it's absolutely out of control at this grade of football.
Uh-huh.
But listen, that's up to every other team, and they've all got a divine right to spend their money whatever way they want to spend it. But for me, it's out of control, and what it leads to is good clubs and good people at good clubs getting affected by it. But in terms of what your point was there in regards to keeping the younger players, I think that younger players want everything yesterday. I think that the biggest struggle that I've found, certainly since being involved in the coaching and that, is the more exposure they give, the more exposure they get. And they do well, but then they want that all the time. And I think that if I was to give any advice to younger players, it's like they don't need everything. They've got a full career ahead of them. There shouldn't have been any rush. There's a few players, 2 or 3 in the last few years at Troon, that you give them a wee bit of recognition and get them exposed to the first team, and then maybe take them back out for a couple of weeks to help them, and then you've got the phone calls, why am I not playing, or messages, or even worse, parents getting involved and asking why their kids are not playing. So I think that patience is a big thing with that. Patience is a big thing. And listen, when they've got talent, we've just signed a young lad on loan for Talbot now, Brian Kennedy, who maybe at this current moment, just Tucker doesn't see him in the Talbot team because of maybe a few things, but see, since he came to us and down at Girvan, and he's learning of the game and his tactical understanding and his power and his pace and his running and when to use his body, when to manipulate the ball, he's been absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I think that's a good thing as well for young players. I think they've got to get playing games. It's all right me saying there that they've got to be patient, but there's a fine line between patient and then stagnating a young boy's career, and I think that my advice would just be to continue playing as long as you can and as much as you can. But even with the 20s, even with under 20s, a few of them, certainly from my experience, is that they didn't want to play under 20s after they had a bit of first time exposure. And again, that's only to the detriment of them, because the more you can expose yourself to football and in the game, then the better you're going to be. Certainly that's my experience of it.
I definitely agree with that as well. And as you're saying about young Ryan, like, I've just gone on to talk about your Girvan now, but obviously when I came to the Irvine game, the Irvine Victoria Girvan game to see you, I was absolutely amazed by Ryan. It was just, I felt as if he was just, every time he got the ball, he just floated around every single player. Nobody could get anywhere near him, and it just felt like that was the entire game. It was showing so much promise. And I agree that a lot of these players, like, you see that young raw talent, and you don't want them being kept out of some, like, the teams just because somebody's on the highest wage at the club that might be on their way out the game, but came down for St Mirren or the likes. But I keeping young talent like that out the team and holding their progression.
Definitely, and listen, that's a great point, and he was outstanding that day, and he's been like that since he came in the door. He's a level above. He knows he's a level above, and he's, what we like about him, Jay, is he's got that almost like arrogance way that he knows that he's better than everyone, but no in an arrogant manner. He carries himself really well, but he plays football with that bit of swagger, that bit of arrogance. To go back to the point that I touched on at the very beginning about players, not having that kind of maverick effect and being overcoached and overeducated and in terms of football, and he doesn't have that. He just goes and plays free. But he's got a great tactical brain. He understands where to be and doesn't need to be coached, But he's also just got that enthusiasm that he plays football as if he's playing in the street with his pals. And I think that certainly for me and my coaching staff, that's something that we really like about him.
No, it's great to see a young player coming through like that. But we'll go and move on to Girvan now. Obviously, you joined Girvan in the summer, and this is your first managerial role in your time in junior football. So, how did that move come about?
Well, listen, towards the end of last year, and it's been a lot to do with what we've kind of spoke on tonight in terms of what I think's maybe certainly could be improved at this grade of football. I just wasn't really enjoying it. I'd been at Troon for a number of years, 13 years, and it wasn't Troon that I wasn't enjoying. I need to be clear about that because Jimmy's been amazing for me on and off the pitch. Still continues to be amazing for me on and off the pitch. So it was very, very amicable. I just spoke to Jimmy and just said that I think I needed a wee break. I wasn't really enjoying it, and he understood. He'd done the same previously. Unfortunately, he had to step back in though and kind of steer us clear of danger at the time. But he understood where I was coming from, and then the Girvan thing just came out of left field. I had no plans, I'd made a decision maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the season. I'd been thinking about it for a long time, but that kind of definitive 2-3 weeks after the season, and I had no plans whatsoever. And then the summer came, and again I had no plans. I wasn't desperate to jump into anything. It's the first time that I'd found myself in that position of not having a club, and I wasn't too fussed about it, to be honest. I was just going to take it as it was coming, and there was like I said, I'd know if I'd ended up with nothing over the summer and that, then I wouldn't have had a problem with it. I was looking forward to having a breathe on. And then I'd spoke to a couple of clubs I'd spoke to a couple of clubs in the summer, and I never really fancied it, to be honest. Nothing really floated my boat, and then the Girvan thing came out of left field. Peter Leonard, I'd met Peter, who's worked for the club and done really well as a manager there, but he'd helped the kind of club out, and he just asked if I wanted to meet for a coffee. I met for a coffee, and he just kind of spoken about how, like I said, Girvan's kind of suffered for a wee bit, and they finished fourth bottom last year in the third division. So the club was basically heading towards the bottom tier at that point, So thankfully they stayed up last year. And then I got excited about it. I spoke to Jimmy at great length about it, and we thought that together it'd be a good thing for me to do. And and then listen, as soon as that kind of initial conversation went with Peter, and then I spoke to Jimmy, and then I spoke to good people around about me that I trust. I thought, I started to get excited about it. I started to get excited about the prospect of working with young players, good, honest young players that wanted to play football for the enthusiasm of playing football. And then I'd met Peter again, and we'd went over a few things, and then he invited me down to the club actually, and the chairman was there, and just went over a few things, and then that was it. Basically, that on that night we just agreed that I was going to take the job, and a bit into the deep end certainly. We only had about 5 or 6 players signed, and then a few had agreed to go to Craig Mark as well, because I think that the kind of manager had went to Craig Mark, so a few boys had agreed to go there. And I'll be honest, Jay, I didn't know a lot of the players at that level of football, and like I say, it was three or so divisions down. So I've worked tirelessly over the summer, me and my coaching staff, to try and bring players in, and that was a new experience, of having people no phone you back, and try not to take it personally. I try to not take it personally, but listen, again, that's part of the journey of learning. But since I said that I'd take the job, and I've just got that bit of enthusiasm back, that hunger to try and improve, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to learn about myself taking this role. I could have went elsewhere. I could have stayed up higher leagues and taken a job in the higher leagues, 1 or 2 jobs up there. But, I just wanted, Girvan felt like the right fit. It felt like the right fit. And since taking the job, we had a great pre-season, and the players have just re-energised me. They've re-energised me by how they've went about their work. And then obviously we've had a good couple of results to start the season. 3 each home at Wishaw, who'd be expected to be up there, and then with a great win away to Irvine Vicks. Had to ride a storm there, had to really defend well, backs to the wall, come up with big blocks, and really, playing 3 times in the 1 week kind of caught up on us a wee bit, but we managed to see it out, rode our luck a wee bit, and managed to get a great win in the last minute. And then Saturday was disappointing at home to Kilsyth. They were well worth a win, and Bailey's done a terrific job there. He's a great young manager, but we were poor. We conceded very, very poor goals, and there was a lot that wasn't to like about us. But again, that was missing key players, and I think that's the one thing that's going to be instrumental if we were to have any sort of decent success this year. We're going to need to have our strongest 11 available most weeks, and that's not been the case so far. It's not going to be the case again this weekend. But listen, we've just got to make do. Football is a priority again for myself, and it's a priority for my coaching staff. You know, Andy Rogers that I've got with me, Andy's unbelievable. He's great forward thinker. You know, I'm obviously a player from a defensive mindset, and he's more of an attacking mix. And then we've got good people behind us as well that are there helping us. So it's been a good start. Loads more to come hopefully, but I'm aware that Rome wasn't built in a day. You know, and we finished fourth bottom last year. And we just want to give the chairman. I just want to give the chairman some better days at football. You know, he's a fantastic guy, and he deserves to be able to come and watch his team and enjoy watching his team play. We've tried to play with a bit of identity, play some good footballs and that. Like every coach does, you know. I'm not going to sit here and build myself up to be nothing. Every coach wants their team playing good football, but the most entertaining football for me is winning football. So hopefully we get some more wins.
No, definitely, because I could see, like, even just talking about your style of play there. As I said to you the other night after the Irvine Vicks game where you beat them, straight away, instantly, I could see that when like play had stopped or a free kick, you were quickly on their case going, right, come on, quickly, right, get the ball moving, get it out wide or something like that. And it instantly response. Like, it was great to see the response for the players and quickly picking it up as well. And a lot of times I've been at like junior games and that, and you see like so many players arguing back and like do like a pure arrogance about them, just to like totally disregarding and saying. But every player looked as if they are taking in what you're saying and looking to try and implement that as quick as possible.
Nah, they have, and that's been the thing that's re-energised me the most. You know, they've been unbelievable since we came in, and they take everything that we say as for gospel. You know, and that's a real honour that they do that. You know, but we work hard with them. We're a team, and we'll make sure that we continue to work hard with them. But tempo's a big thing for me in the team. You know, you've got to be fit, you've got to be energetic. You know, you've got to have that enthusiasm to play football. I think that for myself, you know, I've learned quite a lot already. You know, as a player, Jay, you know, you never really. Certainly I can only speak for myself. I never really enjoyed the highs so much because you were always thinking about the next one, and then before you know it, you know that next one doesn't ever come. And then the lows, you know, I would sit and analyse the lows for days, weeks. You know, I would come home from a game and Sean would be able to tell straight away from my face if we'd won or no. So I've tried to take that out of the equation. I've tried to leave my football now. And I'm aware that there's going to be ups and downs, but it's about trying to find that balance, that kind of level playing field. And listen, that's been the one thing that I've learned the most about myself recently is that, you know, losing football games is part and parcel of the journey. But it's about how you learn from it and how you improve in it. And hopefully, listen, we get a sore one at the weekend. This weekend we've got Thrieve, who beat Irvine Vicks 7-0. They're flying. So, listen, they're up there to be shot at. We know it'll be tough, but I think it's going to be a league where you win every couple of weeks and then you lose every couple of weeks. I think it's going to be competitive. So, hopefully we turn up Saturday with the right attitude, which we've shown so far. And if we do that, then we've got a chance of winning the game.
Exactly, and that's so I was going to say. You've obviously like the future fixtures and that. You've got 4 home games in a row coming up as well, so that obviously work better. But I didn't know that actually 3-1, 7-0 at the weekend and that as well. So obviously it's going to be a tough challenge, and there is teams. Obviously, there's been 3 teams promoted into the third division that are going to be wanting to challenge up there as well, and 3 that have been relegated into it that are just desperate to get back up into the second division. So what's based on all that as well, like when you first joined Girvan that as well, what was the owner's expectations for you? Because obviously you said that you finished third bottom. I think it was just above Port Glasgow juniors, I'm sure, just narrowly avoiding relegation. But is it? I don't expect with you coming in that they'll just turn around and go, yeah, them's just to avoid relegation again this year, because nobody wants to be in that state.
The remit was simple when I went in, and we just said that we're starting for day one, you know, and try to build it. Try to build the club again, try to build the team, try to put a winning team in the park. You know, there wasn't target of avoid relegation or finish mid-table or go and try and compete for the league. You know, I just said that I'd want the team to be. I'd want the team on the park to epitomise me as a kind of player, and a team that would reflect me as a player. You know, and everything that I did as a player, I wanted to be the best. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say that we've got to recreate football and we're going to win title after title, but I just want the chairman to be able to come and enjoy his team playing football on a Saturday. You know, football is such a huge thing, and a huge thing in people's lives. You know, we're the fortunate ones that are involved in it, and we can make a difference. You know, I touch on this quite a lot, that you know, if you come and you win your football game on a Saturday, every single aspect of your life is better. You know, whether it's your relationship with your partner, or whether it's your relationship with your mates, your work. Football's got such a huge positive impact on your life, and then what the flip side of that is the negative. You know, and and life's tough now. You know, as we can see from all social media and everything else at the moment, life's very difficult and very tough, and it's important that we all stick together and stay united. And listen, if you can win football games, then I'm not going to say it's going to solve all your problems. Of course it's not, but for that immediate feeling and that Saturday night, there's no better feeling, you know, sitting eating your Chinese or your Indian or whatever food you're having on a Saturday night, watching match of the day, you know, or having a couple of pints, whatever it does, it's just better when you win, you know, it's just better when you win. You know, I found myself, I work sometimes on a Saturday night and you're up there skipping about in your night shift instead of going there with the shrugged shoulders and the downbeat attitude. You know, you go there with that wee spring in your step. So the importance of winning football games is never going to be lost on me, whether that's working for the bottom level at the moment where I'm at, or going up through the leagues, hopefully, which I can do with Girvan or other teams or other players, you know, or other managers. You know, I think that the winning feeling of football is something that you can't ever replace.
No, I completely agree. Also, touching on that again, the fans, like you're obviously quite a big name in the lonely leagues and that as well, and well known round about it. And you'll have probably had a chance to speak to quite a few of the Girvan fans and that coming down to games during pre-season and the start of season. Do you think they've got their expectations for you set quite high because of your stature in the game, or do you think it's still quite grounded and more realistic at this point since it's your first job?
I can't say that I've found any level of expectation. What I've just found is for them to be incredibly welcoming. You know, it feels like a wee family at the club. You know, we go down there. I went down last Wednesday afternoon just with the kids. I was away for a few days off my work and took the kids away for a couple of days, and then on the way back we popped into the club, and it was the same kind of people that are there on match day, that are there working at the ground, you know, cleaning the stand or cleaning the pitch, or, you know, it's a real family atmosphere is what I've found from Girvan so far. I've not found pressure, you know, the pressure will come from within. Certainly from myself and Andy and Scott, you know, the part of the coaching staff, and Callum, the goalie coach, we've got pressure, you know, pressure comes from within for us. We know what we want to achieve, but certainly from the outside, I've not felt any pressure whatsoever. They've been welcoming, you know, I think they can understand that obviously on the sideline I'm passionate for my team, and I think that they resonate with that, you know. I think that they resonate with the fact that it means something to me, and I hope that they do. And listen, hopefully we can continue to progress. We've made good progress so far, steady progress, you know. We've not pulled up trees, but I'm hopeful. But in the few coming weeks when we get to work more, you know, I think it's important that I think next week we've got a midweek game, and then that's us in terms of the midweek games for a long time, and that's when I think that you'll really see the benefit of us and our team, because then we can get to work on the training ground Monday, Tuesday. What I've found this pre-season has been that it's been so stop-start with holidays, you know, weddings, and the Euros obviously was a big thing. You know, I was away for a part of that. Andy was away for a holiday, you know, so we've not had too much time with us two being on the training ground with the players. I think there's only been maybe 5 sessions, if that, since the start that we've had both of us on the training ground. So hopefully in the coming weeks that we can really get to work with the players, and then I think that you'll really see us kicking on.
Well, I'd say it must be very difficult. Like I say, you're working, like constantly, I say you're working away just now, and that as well. Well, you've got a game coming at the weekend. You've got to try and fit in all this training at the same time, a family life back up the road, and then trying to make time for like in the games and that at the weekend as well. Does that ever get like on top of you doing that quite much? And see when it does, what do you kind of do to kind of bring yourself back down and stop yourself getting overwhelmed?
It certainly does, and I think more so probably in the last couple of years I've been at Troon. I think it's I think I let it affect me too much. I think that Troon
Uh-huh.
kind of meant too much for me. The club actually, to the detriment of me, meant too much to me at the times. And things that I shouldn't be getting frustrated about, I was getting frustrated about. So I've tried to learn from that. But no, listen, it's still a juggling act. It's you ask any manager at this level of football. I spoke to Martin Loughlin, who had an unbelievable time at East Kilbride, and what a great manager he is, and spoke to him about why he's not been back in yet, and he's been plenty of offers, but it's just a time thing. It's a full-time job to do this. It's a full-time job, and
Uh-huh.
in between having a full-time job yourself or a part-time job and a young family, I absolutely can see why it is a big struggle. And there's times that yesterday I was on the phone yesterday for a couple of things to try and sort with players, just in my lunch break at work, and you've just got to. I've got to try and box clever with it. When it's getting me down, I've got to delegate. I've got to be able to say to like Sandy, Scott, Callum, can you maybe speak to this player, or can you maybe do that?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, and I think that I've got to learn for that. Learned absolute tons for Jimmy over the years. And putting that into practice is going to be the biggest struggle for me. Because obviously the wealth of knowledge that he's got, and Jimmy's great at delegating, but I'm not so great, so maybe I need to learn a wee bit more.
Aye, that's decent though, hearing that you're kind of, hopefully it improves for you overall as well. So just before I let you go, I'd just like to ask a few questions just on the managerial side of it for like training and coming through your licenses as well. So what kind of training do you have to go through to be able to become a manager in the level that you're working at now?
So I'd done a few badges when I played. I can't remember what they were, but I'd done a couple of badges. I think that when I was maybe 21, 22 at Morton, and the guys for the SFA came round, and I'd done my first kind of 2 badges then. And then just after COVID and that, I'd done the first part of my UEFA C licence, I think, or B licence. I can't remember what one it was. But I never followed on to the second part because I couldn't get time off my work to actually do the course through Orium. So that was the kind of thing for me. So that's the kind of coaching badges as such. But most of the coaching techniques I've just picked up through learning through former players or former managers. Most of the stuff that I've done has just been from that. Not so much coaching manuals or what have you, or stuff like that. But I do have a couple of websites that I refer to for some coaching drills and that from time to time or that. And obviously I've got a wealth of contacts there that I can pick up the phone to and speak to about stuff. Andy Bell at Troon, he came in last year at Troon, and he's got some great coaching ideas. Picked up a few things from him last year that I've introduced to myself. But so in regards to licence though, Jay, I'll be hopefully going for my second part of my UEFA C this year. And then I'll be hopefully progressing through that. I would like to do more of them. I would like to certainly get the bare minimum done, so that I can obviously, if the opportunity was to come to manage at a higher level, then I'd be ready at that point, But listen, I think that the licences thing, I kind of delayed it for a long time there, but there's no way of getting around it now. I think that you've got to do it. You've got to be you've got to have your licence in terms of if you go further up the tiers that you need to manage or even coach at. So, that's something that I'll be looking to do in the coming future. But I think that for me as well, it's just that when I was coming towards the end of my career, 33, 34, 35, I knew that obviously my career was kind of going to be coming towards an end. So I started to then think about management, and I started to think about coaching and drills and just taking wee notes from time to time and picking up on stuff that I liked or stuff that I didn't like. And listen, again, it's just a case of trying to shuffle it and juggle it as best I can at training at Girvan at the moment. It's been a bit of stop-start again, like I said, because of the situation. And even in terms of facilities, we're having to use public parks for a long time now because the schools are shut. So thankfully we've managed to get back into our Astra stuff at Carrick Academy for Monday there and Wednesday. So hopefully, like I say, we'll be able to get some good training, because I think training is important at this level. I think the boys are naturally fit, certainly higher up the leagues. They're naturally fit. So I I think that if you can implement a few things at training and finer details, then it definitely does come help. Definitely does help. Come Saturdays.
Oh, no, that's decent to hear, and I'm glad. Like, I wish you all the best. Sorry for going forward with those Elises and that. I'm sure you'll absolutely smash it when the time comes. But just before we sign off, just is there any advice that you would have for somebody going through all this coaching just now as well? Or would you recommend this to a lot of other people that are currently maybe at your position of being assistant manager that are looking to try and progress?
Listen, I think that time's the biggest thing, I think you know yourself, if you're going to be ready for it. When I decided to leave Troon in the summer, like I said, there was a few options, and then I had a couple of options actually to go and be assistant manager somewhere else, and that was never ever going to be an option. If I was going to be assistant manager anywhere, then it would have been at Troon with Jimmy, but I'd obviously wanted to step out and be my own man at deep within. Even though I had nothing lined up or nothing, no real thought process, there must have been someone deep within that thought, go and have a crack at it yourself, and listen, there's been aspects of it at Troon certainly, and I was very fortunate that Jimmy allowed me the luxury of being able to, really focus in on the management side of Troon, but under his supervision at times, but to be clear, I'm now out there myself as a number one, I've not got that comfort blanket now. Things are going wrong now, it's on me. Me and Jimmy had a laugh about it last year. When things were going well, it was because Jimmy was doing well. But when they weren't going well, it's because Dino wasn't doing well, But I don't have that anymore, It's all on me and my coaching team. So, and listen, that brings pressure. Of course it does. That brings pressure from within. But listen, I've been involved in football for a long time now. And listen, if you don't want to be the best, and that's up to you. But for me, I've always just been drilled from the, my career. I was a basic, I was an average player, and I just worked hard and really, really focused in and dialed in and made something of myself through just hard work, endeavour, attitude, all these kind of good things. Nobody would have said that I was blessed with natural footballing ability. Nobody. But I just worked at it. I trained. I worked hard, and football meant something to me. You know what I mean? Football meant something to me. So in terms of would I recommend going into coaching? It's hard. It is hard. I think that the expectation is the biggest thing. And certainly since I've dropped down to Girvan, that was going to be the biggest thing, as my expectation levels of what I can expect from players or coaches or management. I get sucked in on Saturday at the side of the pitch to argument with one of Cosai's coaching staff, and I'm coming home after the game thinking to myself, what's going on there, man? There's absolutely no reason for that. No reason for it. So I'm still learning all the time, but listen, I think that balance is a key, and within life, obviously balance is a key, but in terms of football and coaching, and you've got to have that right amount of passion to that right amount of calmness as well on the side, and hopefully that's something that I can get better at going forward as well.
No, brilliant. Honestly, I can't thank you enough for coming on to give us all the insight and everything. So I wish you all the best going forward, mate. I hope to get to quite a few more games to see you play, hopefully a few home games and that as well. And just I hope that you don't lose that excitement and joy that you clearly have for the football at this level, and you just keep at it, because it's absolutely loved coming to Troon, come and watch and speak to you and that as well. Now Girvan as well, and hopefully somewhere else in the future and that, if it all goes well.
No, I appreciate it, Jane. And thanks to you as well, all those unpaid hours last year that you came, just wanted to learn, and look at you now, mate, you're flying, this channel will definitely it'll go well, and you've got a great understanding of the game and a great passion for the game as well, mate, so well done to you as well, and stick in there, man.
Magic. Thanks again for that, Dean. I appreciate your time, mate.
Anytime. Cheers, my man.
A massive thanks to Dean for coming on the podcast and sharing his insights with us there. If you're ever in the local area at Girvan, or you live locally to there, make sure and go and give Girvan your support and support Dean in his first managerial role. I'm sure he'll appreciate it, and there'll be plenty of decent football which you'll be able to watch. A massive thank you to you all for tuning into the podcast as well. If you enjoyed it and would like to see more, please follow and subscribe on all platforms and social media. You can find them all in my Linktree bio, which you'll find at the top of my social media platforms, and I'll put it in the description of the podcast. Massive thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you all on the next episode. Take care. Please.
Don't try and run before you can walk.